choke with his own cloak.
I think he even said something about taking Miller's wife.
That's right, my friends. This weekend, if you are watching this video live on day one, I got to, I suppose, tick one of my wrestling boxes, whatever that means. It sounds absolutely terrible. And at Ultimate Pro Wrestling UPW down in Weymouth, I was going to take on Danhausen. Now, I'm just going to let you know now, there is a link in that description down there for UPW Plus. If you would like to watch the whole match, and I really would love it if you do, you can do it. It's only a few pounds or a few dollars from my American friends. And there's a bunch of other events with me on there as well. Some matches are good, some matches are not so good. So with me in it, I mean, all the other matches are brilliant. But you can laugh at me, go, Simon, you totally flubbed that up. But any support would be great. And give me your feedback as well, which is basically what we're going to talk about today. Because we used to do this a while ago, but I suppose, well, things have changed and things have moved on. But this one is right there looking at us in the face. And I do have some footage like this.
Miller, he really wants this opportunity to face someone like Danhausen.
So I thought we could use that as a kind of a way to, well, yeah, just get into it and talk about it. And I got a bunch of images too, one of which will magically appear on the screen now. But yes, if you know anything about me, you know that people like Danhausen are the type of, this always sounds disparaging. I don't mean it disparaging, but I guess the world has just proven me right. Because if people said to me, Simon, what's your dream match? Obviously, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Gunther, right? All of these things would be amazing. But I have a feeling that may never happen, right? I always believe, and you always got to soldier on. But then there are these incredible independent wrestlers, obviously Danhausen's with AEW, but have this sort of, once again, the freedom to kind of go and do whatever the flab they want. Danhausen seems to be back on the tour train. So when people used to say to me, Simon, who would you really like to wrestle? One of the names that would always come out of my mouth was that guy, because not only does he have a gimmick that just makes me laugh, and you know, goofy wrestling is my favorite thing in the world, which is a compliment, by the way. People sometimes think I'm being disparaging. I promise you I'm really not. But also, again, has the experience, kind of looks at wrestling in the same way I do, was my impression. I don't know, so obviously I don't know the guy. So to get the opportunity and realize that we can go out there and have some fun and have some laughs, but also have a proper match as well, it was awesome. Like, it genuinely was.
I'm gonna get in this ring, and I don't want no funny business. Not a chicken. Hey! Grief! Ref, keep it back. Right. Even though this idiot thinks I'm a chicken, when clearly I am a human male, you think I'm a moron, Danhausen?
It was one of those things where the best part about wrestling is never driving to a wrestling show, right? But sometimes driving back can be right up there, because if everything does click and you have a good time, you do indeed feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum. So even though you drive 3 hours there, the 3 hours back, you're like, man, who cares? I'll get a little bit of food and I'll drive around with a smile on my face. That's essentially what happened here. Now, for those that don't know, because anytime anybody sees me in this get, they're like, Simon, why do you like such a dickhead? UPW books me as a heel. They book me as a bad guy, and I will never be able to thank them enough, which is another reason why you should go to the UPW Plus subscription thing, because you can watch the whole turn. And sure, you can watch one at first. The audience are like, we're not going to boo you, Simon. Why would we do that? Till, thankfully, it happened at the Danhausen match too. I almost did a backflip inside my head. As soon as my music hits, people are like, oh, not this guy. And that's wonderful, because it means hopefully we've suspended our disbelief as I completely go inside a baseball here. But
And you know, the effects of the curse remain to be seen on Simon Miller, but I was going to point this out earlier. Danhausen, possibly the hardest opponent in professional wrestling to prepare for.
Absolutely, so unorthodox. There's the cover. Hooks the leg.
But it kind of does make me look forward to those shows, maybe a bit more than other ones. I mean, I appreciate all booking, but I love doing that stupid character, which is the moneymaker. And it sort of started off by tying into the YouTube stuff, like I've got a bunch of cash from the internet, if only that were true. So now I don't give a flub about anything else, and I'm just going to run right through a promotion and basically be the biggest moron you've ever seen in your life, which obviously is always going to be the way I would have taken it. But to sort of have that dynamic, because I think, and again, this is not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just my thing. I think most of the other matches he has had on this UK tour has been babyface, which makes sense, because of course you can have super duper fun with that. But to go out into an environment where I was pretty confident that people would boo me, like, it's good to know, because when you're planning a match, you can say, well, they won't like me, so we can do this. When he came out, like a Steve Austin pop, and it was sold out too, which was awesome. And And yeah, like, I don't want to give too much away because I'd rather you watched it, because I think sometimes when you don't know the spoilers, obviously, it makes the thing way more fun. But we got to, I got to put in some of my ideas. He tweaked some ideas. He obviously brought a bunch of ideas to himself. And it was just awesome to collaborate with somebody who, of course, right now has a huge name in professional wrestling, whether you like him or not. And people go, oh, don't get Danhausen. That's fine. You don't have to get it. It's just he is a success. There's no two ways about it. So to be able to kind of share those things together and then put a match together that I don't want to go say I was proud of it. If you've watched my other wrestling videos, you know I struggle with this a lot. And I think most wrestlers probably do this, or whatever your thing is, whether you're a swimmer, whether you're a hockey player, tennis player, you probably watch your stuff back and you only see the things you could have done better. And with this one too, it was my first match back in 2 months. Again, if you watch my channel, I did the last match musical, one of the coolest things I've ever done, but I did injure my shoulder. So I needed some time off and I wanted to not have the Danhausen match as my first one back, but my physio said, well, this is what I think we should do. And we listened to them because we paid them a lot of money. So I was able to go to a ring and bounce around a little bit and be like, okay, we're good here.
Cutter! Danhausen.
I'm not in the shape that I would have want to have been. I bet nobody else gives a flub about that, but I do. And of course, we're all human beings, so we can relate to this. When you are in good shape, or at least you're in the shape that you feel like is good, that does something to you mentally. And as we talked about here on this channel a while ago, sure, in those 2 months off, well, not the 2 months, but in about a month off, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to relax. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And I took it a little bit too far. If you want to compare it to somebody who was on a grand stage, although I think this is horrible, but I understand people like to connect the dots, it's kind of like what happened to Sheamus when he came back, although he's in way better shape than I ever have in my entire life. But people were like, what's going on, man? And then within 2 weeks, he was like, it's totally fine. So maybe I should have sort of dialed that stuff in a little bit earlier. So that was something that I did notice. I absolutely know I can be better shape. But even now, this was like 4 or 5 days ago. And again, because I've smashed it over the weekend, I can already feel like I've lost some weight here, I've lost some weight there. But it was just the small things. I probably come from being at the ring for a couple of months. I absolutely could have bumped quicker off a couple of things. There was a German suplex. I'm like, man, I know I can take that better. And overall, it's just sort of my selling was a little bit off. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm not saying it was terrible. But I think there were times where I preempted things. Just a teeny tiny bit. I try and make sure I get one of the clips that kind of shows you that. But again, you'll be able to see it if you do decide to tune in. But, I mean, that does happen every now and then. You can overthink these things. And yeah, you do. You just sort of, because you know what's coming, sometimes you are like 2 steps ahead because you want to do a good job. That's all it is. And that's usually as well when you're not living in the moment. And I think, I wouldn't necessarily say that's appropriate for what we're talking about now, because for 95% I was feeling it because I felt the adrenaline and I was having a good time. But yes, I definitely think there are probably a couple of times where I just moved a little bit far. It was kind of ironic, really. There were some times where I moved a little bit quicker, and there were some times when I needed to move quicker, which goes to show how difficult wrestling can be, and why, if you watch my ups and downs on What Culture, again, make sure you subscribe to them. Make sure you subscribe to me as well. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. You know the deal. You do get a totally different perspective on wrestling, which is why I'm always going to review a match with that in my head, because sometimes when things do go wrong or looks a little bit off, you get the crazies on the internet. Again, you're allowed your opinion. You go, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. But actually, when you have the wherewithal and the know-how, when you've been in a similar position, so you can almost look internally to get the answers. Like, well, actually, I know what happened there. And it's just one of those things in wrestling. But overall, given I was off for 2 months and given the way the fans reacted and what people said afterwards, I'm going to say it was way better than I thought it was going to be. I'm talking about my performance here solely. And I guess I always go into these things a little bit nervous and a little bit apprehensive because, again, I want to put my best foot forward. But hopefully I did do that, right? Again, it definitely was something that I did enjoy. I just know there are things I need to be quicker. And again, when you're selling here, don't spend too long in one position. Again, don't preempt. That's the big thing. Do not preempt. Which, honestly, I genuinely think when I have had a few matches and I've got my kind of wherewithal or my momentum back, all of a sudden that doesn't happen anymore because you do kind of just shift into this world where, again, because you walk in with more power in your loins, whatever that means, you just feel more confident about what you're doing in the ring. But I just want to say thank you to UPW for allowing it to go down. And of course, if you watch the match too, you can see I don't want to spoil it too much. For the last year or so, I've been in a group called Super Money, right? In UPW. And we use this match, given that we assume more eyeballs were going to be on it, to have some fun with the story and to head off in a couple of different directions. But it means you get some cursing at the start with the brothers TBA, so make sure you check them out as well, Joey and Scott. They're the guys that do the podcast with me, right? So make sure you check out the Positive Wrestling podcast. But you got to see like a little story beat with them too, which of course is now going to lead into the to the next show. And I'm sure Danhausen will come back to UPW at some point. I mean, I'm just saying those words. I have absolutely no idea whether he will or whether he won't. But yeah, I think the cool thing about it is that there's loads I can take away from it, and there's loads I can learn from it. And that's all I really want to do. I just want to keep getting better, and wherever it goes is where it can go. But I think the good thing is that I'm self-aware enough to know the areas that we need to scrub up a little bit. And I also know, again, I'm just going off on a tangent here, when I do walk into the ring and I'm in a shape that I'm happier with, that is going to fuel you forward too, because it just does, man. Body dysmorphia is a real thing. Doesn't matter if you're a wrestler, doesn't matter if you're not a wrestler. Again, I know I've done loads of videos about this on my channel, but everybody has it. Everybody. Like, it may not get it a lot, but every single person in this world at one point has walked past the mirror, looked at themselves and be like, man, what is that? Blah, 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 blah. And they kind of fall down the rabbit hole, because we're only human, and there is such a huge focus on body image these days, especially with social media, that sometimes you're trying to live up to unrealistic expectations. Now, I suppose with me, it's more about the fact that I know I've been a bit lax with my diet. Again, not the last few weeks, but before all of that. And I know what kind of shape I can be in. So you start to think, well, I want to be in that shape. And I know people will say nice things. Well, some people say horrible things too. But anytime I talk about this, people do say nice things. But I'm just talking about the way that it affects me mentally. And I have no problem talking about this, because it's true. It's a real thing. And if somebody else hears me ranting and raving about this and goes, oh, I feel the same, hopefully we feel like a little brotherhood, little sisterhood, little hood, and we can use that just to be like, it's okay. Like, it doesn't get me down. It's just something that I'm aware of, so I try and use that in certain situations. But huge shout out to Danhausen for just being an awesome dude all around. Like, he was a genuine pleasure to work with, and I think everybody would have said that at UPW as well. Like, it was just, you could propose ideas, he would change ideas. Doesn't like an idea, well, we can just do this instead. Well, it wasn't even doesn't like it, it's just about making sure that it made sense, all the beats that we wanted to go through. And yeah, again, repeating myself, I think that collaborative effort is the coolest thing about wrestling, especially when you can get to the ring and you can kind of copy and paste it and everybody likes it. That is the main thing. Like, so many people that have seen it have said, Simon, I really enjoyed that match. And that's the job, right? The job is to entertain the fans. I think Jerry Seinfeld said it once. Like, somebody asked him, well, what do you do if you have a stand-up set, but you're not in the mood? He goes, my job isn't to be in my mood. My job is to go out there and tell jokes. And while it's obviously a passion for him, so he gets something from it, the job on a piece of paper would be do a gig, tell jokes, make people laugh. And in this instance, I believe the deal with Danhausen was, you know, showcase him as the star that he is, have a bunch of fun because people know you like goofy wrestling, and have a decent match that ends in a nice crescendoed finish. And yeah, with those things, hopefully we ticked all the boxes. But again, if you do watch it, you can drop me a comment down there. You can send me a DM or whatever on Simon with 316 on all social media. And I appreciate all feedback. Sometimes I've had, honestly, people message me going, Simon, you're the worst, you're the worst wrestler I've ever seen in my life. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't affect me, but I will never, ever not read that and go, okay, well, what can I do to get better? Right now, there's loads I can do to get better. Again, slim down a little bit for sure. Get my cardio up, same kind of a thing. Don't preempt so much. Make sure you don't die in the cell. And just take your time a little bit better. I mean, there's one mistake that I won't tell you because I'd rather see if you noted it out. There's one thing, I just went way too soon because I wasn't comfortable in the silence. And that is definitely something that I'd actually consider a plus of mine, is I'm actually happy to do nothing in the silence and wait and wait and wait. But again, because I was a little bit like, oh, in my head, I jumped in sooner than I should. But it's great. I'm glad that I noticed that. And then the next match we do, I won't do that again. And obviously I have some matches before this, but just as a cheap plug here too, September the 8th, if you are in Ontario, Canada, I'm heading out to Alpha One, which is Ethan Page's promotion, so I'm super duper excited about that. So come on down. Hopefully by that point, all these things I would have brought to the table. You go, oh, hi, he's doing it. So again, last pimp for UPW Plus, which is down there in the description. But otherwise, if you came to the event, thank you so much. Shout out to Danhausen in case he sees this wonderful guy. Hopefully we can work together again. And shout out to TBA as well. They're just the best, but let's not break kayfabe too much, brother. And just shout out to everyone at UPW as well, the management, Lewis, etc., etc. It was so cool to be able to do that, because obviously everybody wants to get to WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, TNA, whatever it may be. But when you start doing the indie shows, you realize how great they can be as well and how much worth they can bring to the table. And I know some people on the internet like to poo-poo that. And I get it, it's because you've never done it, right? But when you actually have the experience, even if there's only 10 people in the audience, it can be the best time of your life, depending on who your opponent is and depending on what you're going to do and depending how they're going to react. But I'll leave it there. It's a different video for a different day. Like I say, get in touch with me if you do do have anything you'd like to say about it, even if you think it was crap, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, it is grillermind.com/Simon. You can something get 10% off. They're doing big deals every Tuesday. So check out the website on a Tuesday. You're probably going to get a lot of money off pre-workout, which is their best supplement, best pre-workout in the game, bar none. We talked about social media. Cameo is Simon Miller. TikTok is Simon J. Miller. Otherwise, it's Pro Wrestling Tees. Buy yourself a t-shirt, or Sounds Athletics. Buy yourself a t-shirt there. Otherwise, interact with this video as much as you want. Curse it, should you wish to do that. Otherwise, I'll see you very soon.